Welcome to another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I have not one, but two fabulous guests with me today. The first is Edward Olver. He's the co-founder of Visions for the Future at Broughton Sanctuary, which I'm sure we'll hear much more about as we go through this podcast. And the second, I'm equally excited to say that we're here with Sensei Zen Takai. Sensei is the 16th generation heir to a samurai tradition. He's known as the Zen Samurai Online. So a huge warm welcome to you, Edward, and to you, Sensei.
Thank you, Richard.
And
thank you so much. Thank you. So excited.
Great. So as I was saying to you both before we came on, I think let's start with Sensei. And I'm so excited to hear your story and the wisdom that you have to offer. And then we will also weave in, Edward, your story and what you're doing at Broughton Sanctuary. And as I understand it, at some point soon, you'll be bringing Sensei over to Broughton Sanctuary. So we'll learn more about that as the conversation progresses. So without further ado, Sensei, as with all my guests, I love to hear a little of your backstory, where your childhood, your relationship with your parents, a little bit about your background before we delve into to samurai and all the wisdom that's there for us.
Yeah, it's thank you very much. And my name is Zen Takai. Right, I was born 60th generation samurai family. Right, and I'm teaching very traditional and samurai technique. Maybe you guys have a image, the samurai is always like a fighting and shouting and attack to the opponent, right? Yeah. But the traditional style is very different, right? Because from the ancient time, samurai people was a leader of the society. They are top of the society. That's why their most important thing is, how to avoid the fight and keeping a peace. This is very important point. That's why our training is not just like a fighting technique. How to control your mind, how to keep silent mind. Yeah, this is a very most important intention for the training. And I'm teaching kind of this training for the people.
Right. And take me back to your childhood. Did you first start to learn this as a kid? Is that right?
Yes, because, I was born 60th generation samurai family. That's why my master is my father, right? I always learning from my father. But samurai education is kind of a little bit different with a normal martial arts style, right? Normally, it's a martial arts is there's a competition style. That's why the most important purpose is get a number one, get a gold medal, right? But samurai technique is most important point is how to find your balance. It's a little bit different perspective. Not to try to get a win, because not try to get a win, but not to lose. This is a balance. Because if you try to get a win, always people revenge, right? Always just find a balance, right? That's why I always learning from my father, but how can I say? It's little different educational style. Always I learn from my father's back, from the behind. My father never faced to me, but I always see my father's back and find the answer from his back. Because one of the traditional samurai books said, this relationship of master and or my father and me, and student and master, if master teaching to many kind of techniques, to the student, sometimes student forget about it. But if student try to get something from the master by himself, never forget, right? Yeah. That's this kind of like a relationship, me and my father. That's why I always watching my father's back. This is kind of my memory.
And it creates a curiosity in you as the student. Oh, I want to know more about this. So it's a pull from the student.
Yes, that's why master's responsibility is keep patience and a little wait.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Try to find the answer from the student.
Yeah. And so how would it work? Like, were you the only one amongst your friends who were learning this, or did you have friends involved? I'm curious about how you grew up around this.
Yeah, I'm growing up. It's a, how can I say? My family is a kind of like a very strict family. Yeah,
Right.
that's why, how can I say? When I was teenage, and I'm lots of curiosity and Western culture and punk rock music and so Hollywood movie or something, right? Yeah, that's why. And when I was teenage, and step by step, I against with my family because I have other curiosity, right? And I started punk rock music and band, and shouting on the stage, and I have this kind of experience. After that, I clearly understand this is a very important tradition. That's why I go back to my family house and learning again. Yeah, that's why I think that when I was teenage, keeping a traditional samurai training, but at the same time, I'm doing a normal like a teenager's experience. I have a both.
And how did your father react to you becoming a punk rocker? And so,
Yeah, and how can I say? Kind of like he was waiting. Yes, he was waiting
okay,
because after that, this experience and go back to family house, he said, okay, if you want to become master, if you become a good leader, okay, first you have to go to the opposite side. Okay, go to the opposite experience. That's why you can go back to a balancing position. Yeah, that's why he's kind of waiting to come back to the family house and the family tradition. Yeah.
okay, yeah, it reminiscent of the left-hand path. I think they talk it in the yogic tradition. You familiar with that?
Mm.
Yeah, and okay, and tell me a little bit then about this training. So, what are the because I understand samurais, it's not just about swinging the sword, right? So, what are the facets of the
Yeah,
training that you went through?
yeah, it's a samurai training is okay. Of course, it's like a physical training, swinging a sword. Okay, but at the same time, and learning about the philosophy and wisdom, it's a knowledge also important point, right? But everything is okay. It's how can I say? Oh, purpose is okay, try to find a balance. Okay, samurai technique it's made from the fifth element balance and inspired from the nature. Order is okay. Ground, water, fire, wind, sky. Okay, each element have a philosophy and also physical movement. Yeah, that's why our training is okay. We are learning about the both. Okay, and wisdom and physical technique. Okay, mind and body it's a both, and it's making a balance. Okay, this is a kind of intention for the samurai tradition training.
Right. And so, what would that look like as a practice for you as a kid? Because I can kind of visualize the physical element, right? My kids are actually learning Kuk-Sol Won, which is a South Korean martial art right now. So I see them practicing with the various weapons. But what what are these other arts, and how do you train
Yeah,
those?
yeah, it's a kind of like a sometime on the samurai tradition training. It is called a moving meditation, right? You control a sword at the same time, control a breathing and control a mind. That's why sometimes it looks similar like a Tai Chi movement. Yeah, Tai Chi movement is just flowing like a water, okay, you know, and more like a floating the energy. It's not just like a fighting, not like that, right? Yeah, that similarity like a Tai Chi or if you know about this name, the Aikido. Aikido is
Yes.
also Aikido or Tai Chi. This kind of a feeling is very similarity. Samurai tradition.
Right. And what is it seeking to create in you? Is it is it a sense of a feel for the energetic field we're swimming in? Like what is it what does it feel like to learn this stuff?
Yeah, it's for example, I want to explain about it using a wind element training. Wind. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, wind element is a fourth level. Okay, ground, water, fire, wind, and last one is sky. But wind element fourth level, right? And fourth level training is okay. For example, wind element. We cannot touch the wind. We cannot see the wind, right? We have to feel, right? That's why wind element training, how to develop their sixth sense, okay? How to develop intuition. This is very important point, more than attacking. That's why sometimes we go to the mountainside in the midnight and making a blind and doing a meditation. Okay, and the master is okay, suddenly attack from the behind or attack you. And if you feel something, you just block. You know, this kind of a training, how to catch the feeling, right? Because okay, this is a fourth level, okay? Because okay, samurai technique, how to find your inner peace, how to keeping a peace. This is very important point. Please making an image, okay? If you feel some strong emotional feeling or thinking too much, when you get the information, you misunderstand. Okay? That's why you have to correct information. Okay? You have to keep silent mind. That's why you can get the correct information. This is a fourth level techniques. Okay? Develop this kind of thing is very important, more than physical techniques.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I'm sure a lot of people in the audience could relate to overthinking something. And so what's something direct they can do? Well, first of all, I love your insight, right? If you're overthinking it, you're probably on the wrong track, right? But if people are in an overthinking state, how do people deal with that?
Yeah, it's overthinking is okay. This kind of questions. Okay, we are talking about the mind, how to control the mind, right? Especially in modern generation, lots of information like SNS, Instagram, also okay, how to control mind. Sometimes it's using a mind, but everything about opposite side, right? Mind and body, it's like a yin and yang, right? That's why samurai philosophy is okay. If you want to control a mind, you have to control a body, more physical movement, right? That's why, okay, thinking too much is here. It's a brain, okay? That's why please focus your stomach position, okay? And feel from the stomach and breathing from the stomach and focus your stomach and, okay, physically concentrate the stomach. That's why automatically you can make a long distance from the brain and also long distance from the emotion, right? That's why one of the physical technique, stomach breathing techniques, very important for release your emotion and your brain.
Right. Yeah, I like that. So if you're overthinking, don't try and clear your mind. Focus on your stomach.
Yes, right. More physically focus your stomach. Physically control breathing stomach, right?
Yeah, great. And you were learning that from a very young age.
Yes, because breathing technique is very, very fundamental. Okay, it's a very, very basic, right? Because in Japanese, okay, and breathing, it is called iki in Japanese. Iki, right? Iki meaning that it's equal life, right? Do you know the ikigai?
Yeah, with the Venn diagram and the flower, the
ikigai
petals.
is a kind of English Japanese, okay, but iki meaning is like life. Gai is okay, iki is life, and gai is a meaning of the life, right? That's why iki is a life. Equal, it's meaning of breathing. Okay, that's why we have to control breathing. That's why we can control our life. Okay, and physical and mind, both balance is important.
Right, got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then there's another three I was reading about. So there's calligraphy, poetry, and dance. Is that right? Did that start early for you also?
Yeah, it's because a samurai education is okay. And first of all, we have to learn about the sword technique, right? But okay, traditional education is okay. We have to learn about the 18 style art and martial arts. 18 style, 1-8, okay? Sword technique, calligraphy, archery, dancing, the music, and poem, many kind of things, right? This meaning is okay. And if understand the fundamental, okay, how to swinging a sword is understand fundamental, okay, and automatically it's connecting with everything. That's why swinging a sword and control a brush and singing and dancing, it's not changing, okay. And if you master the 18 style art and martial arts, automatically this fundamental you are using in your daily life, right? That's why don't focus just one direction, not just a sword technique, okay. Daily life and martial arts and art is not separate. Everything's connected. That's why we have to learn about lots of the art and martial arts.
Right. And but how is it that becoming better at poetry can make one a better warrior?
Because this is it's related to the samurai history, okay, and basically, traditional Japanese culture also samurais also hide the emotion. This is very important point. Hide the emotion. But most bad example is okay, hiding, suddenly boom, explosion. This is very bad example, right? Yeah, that's why sometimes we have to release the emotion. But how to release the emotion beautifully through the art? This is very important point. Just showing the emotion, it's making a trouble. Okay, but showing the emotion through the art. Okay, this is making a balance. One of the example story, and in the fighting field, okay, samurai have a helmet here and samurai armor. Inside the helmet and small paper and pen and brush is inside. Okay. Before fight, okay, bow each other and introduce each other. Okay. After that, I write the upper poem. For example, today is a beautiful sunny day, and pass to the opponent. Opponent write the lower poem. For example, and today is good for a fight or something like that. Collaborate. Okay.
Okay.
And fighting with each other, right? For example, I lose and opponent win. Okay. Opponent. Okay. And take this art poem and bring to my family. Okay, that's
Wow.
why this is perfectly fair fight, and it looks like a beautiful memory. That's why my family not revenge to the opponent. Okay, it seems like this many kind of like and art is okay. Try to avoid the revenge using art.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful story. I did not know that about samurais. Yes. Is it also true? I heard that it's true that if a samurai, this was a story I heard. I was on a mission to assassinate somebody else, and they discovered the person that they had to kill, and they were going to kill this person, but they recognized that they were in a state of anger at the moment that they were due to kill this other person. And so they stopped and they saved the person and said, I can't kill you like this. I can't kill you when I'm in state of anger. I'm going to need to leave you and come back another day when I'm not in anger. Is that right?
Yeah, this is kind of a legendary story, but this is very important way of thinking. Okay, because if try to kill somebody and try to attack you or assassin with a emotional attack, don't react with emotion. It's like a fire and fire. Okay, that's the most important strategy about the fifth element. Okay, about the fire. Fire, you have to disappear the fire. Okay, what you need the element is a water. That's why don't show the emotion. Try to show the water element feeling more silent, more relaxed, and automatically you can disappear the fire and you can go back to and balancing position. Okay, yeah, normal martial arts competition style fire. If you get a fire, more big fire and attack, right? Yeah, but samurai is opposite. Try to control yin and yang. If opponent fire, be a water, right? This is an important way of thinking.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of leadership, so a lot of people listening to this, will have leadership roles. What do you believe are the most important lessons we can take from the samurai tradition into leadership, especially in a modern context?
Yeah, it's and for the samurai leadership education is okay. And one of the important concept is okay, no ego and no emotion, and always we have to have a objective eye, right? Because in modern generation and movement is also okay. For example, always feeling a core is center is here and moving like this, right? Okay, and also always people for SNS and many kind of information. How do you feel? How do you think? This is very important point, right? But samurai technique perfectly opposite because traditional Japanese body it is called karada in Japanese. Okay, karada meaning is okay, same meaning, just empty box. We are
Right.
just empty box, right? That's why inside our mind, nothing. Sometimes emotional feeling, but emotion is always up to down. Don't trust about it. Brain sometimes make an illusion, right? Yeah, that's a don't trust about it. Okay, what's the balancing point? Balancing point. Okay, you have to think about okay other person. Okay, for example, me and you. Okay, this is like a yin and yang. That's why balancing point is okay behind us. Okay, like not behind. Sorry, it's and for example, you and me like yin and yang, but balancing
Yes.
position here, right?
Right.
That's why don't focus just one side. Don't focus too much opposite side. Find a balance outside of body, right? But okay, now we are talking together, me and you, and here is nothing, but balancing is here, right?
Right.
It's empty, nothing, but balancing. Find the balance here, okay? That's why, for example, this is very important educational teaching is okay in the fighting field, right? I have a justice. I have a meaning of a fight. I have a family. But at the same time, opponent also have a justice. Opponent also have a meaning of fight. That's why don't forget just one side. This is very difficult, but first, let it go. Let it go your emotion, let it go your thought. Try to find a balancing point outside the body. This is a very important solution and find a leadership, right? That's why no ego, no emotion. This is very important teaching for the how to become a good leader.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and it's not a way I certainly habitually think. You know, if I go into a situation, I can sometimes think, oh, okay, I can attempt to have empathy and think of myself in their shoes, or focus on myself, and or what are my needs here, or what do I want to achieve. But very rarely do I think about, okay, it's a question I don't very often ask myself, is where's the balance between me and this person? Yeah, it's true. I don't tend to think with that style, but I can imagine the benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, this benefit is okay. For example, do you know the mark of Tao? Tao is mark of Tao. It's like a yin and yang put together, right?
No. The symbol, yes.
Yeah, symbol.
Yes,
right?
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, but the Japanese symbol, okay, mark of Tao is okay, and describe the yin and yang, darkness and lightness, okay, and and female and men, okay, everything about yin and yang, right and left, right? But okay, Japanese symbol is okay. We are using a 3 element, 3. Everything about 3 balance, not just 2, right? For example, time is also, right? Okay, past, future, and this moment, right? Okay, and sword movement is also sword and yourself. And one more element is okay, how to organize your energy, right? Everything like that. Don't think just 2. Okay, me and you, okay, opponent, and how to make a relationship. This is also one of the element, right? Always think about 3 elements, and you can get the objective eye.
I love that. Yeah, that's that's a fantastic, a fantastic perspective. It's certainly one I don't dwell in very often. So this mastery of self that we've talked about, this mastery of emotions and so on. What's the best place for people to start? I mean, is there a singular best place for people to start, or what would you advise for people who have some resonance with what you're saying and wish to begin a path of self mastery? Where do you point people?
How to start the training? Yeah, it's many kind of way because each person different intention. But one of the recommend is okay. How can I say? Samurai history is over 1,000 years history. That's why and there's a many kind of a book. Okay, there's a many kind of a book. Of course, and you can buy the Amazon and English title, right? Yeah. Yeah, reading the book is okay. It's a first intention is good for the go into the samurai culture, because samurai culture is okay, not just like a physical technique. First, understand the philosophy and the wisdom and movement put together. This is also important point. Yeah, that's why first step is okay. I recommend something read the book about the samurai. After that, go into the training. Yeah, this is also good flow.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to something about the tradition, isn't it? Because I can imagine many martial artists, who would be asked that question would start with something physical. So it's interesting you're saying start with a book. Yeah. And where do then so if people have prepared themselves and they have some education and some understanding of the philosophy, what are the practices then people tend to take on? Like where do you see students begin to start once they have a grounding in the philosophy?
Okay. Yeah, it's how to start is okay. This is also very important point is okay, and reading a book. Well, this is a first step, for example, right?
Yeah. So I guess I'm talking second step.
Yeah, second step, right? Reading a book is okay, and Japanese traditional samurai book is okay. Always writing very poetic. Okay, sometimes cutting like a wind, fighting like a fire, landing like a ground. It's very poetic, right? That's why always people couldn't understand what is the meaning, right? People couldn't understand logically, right? But okay, reading a book at the same time, you have to keeping a physical training. Okay, how to cutting like a wind. You have to find your answer by yourself, right? That's why reading a book and you feel the intention. What is the meaning of this one? And try to go into find the answer through the body, through the training. How to cutting like a wind. Yeah, this is very, samurai traditional educational style. Don't give the answer correctly, right? Just give the question, right? That's why students try to find the answer by themselves.
Yes. So I suppose what's emerging for me as you talk about this is really, we're talking about creating in the student an appetite for a philosophical inquiry, right? Like into what do these concepts mean and how can I experience them in my body, right?
Yeah. This is very important flow because it gives so many information and so many techniques just give the students. Sometimes students forget about it. Okay. Yeah, but students try to find the answer by themselves. This is very important. If you try to find them by themselves, never forget. Never forget.
Yeah.
It's real technique. It became a real wisdom and philosophy.
Yeah. And as you're speaking, Sensei, I'm really present to how this isn't the norm. I mean, certainly not in martial arts training. Like I say, I train jiu-jitsu. My kids train Kuk Sool Won. This is not part of the broader training that either of us experience, either me nor my kids. And so I suppose what I'm curious about, and maybe you see this as well, is that this richer context for training martial arts seems to have been lost from what I can see. I mean, certainly in MMA or UFC that we see right now, this isn't something that's referenced. Well, I suppose, why has it been lost? And if we think it's important to regain some of this, how can we go about regaining it?
Yeah, this isn't just my thought. Okay, specialty 20th century, 21st century is more like a competition society, right? Everything higher and bigger and faster. This is kind of like people's purpose of their life. Okay, but samurai technique just find the balance. That's a little bit different perspective, right? That's why competition martial arts styles get boom suddenly develop like a boxing and MMA and people like it. I'm also like it, like boom, like a fire, right? Yeah, but specialty and after the COVID, and people try to find a new perspective, and suddenly after the COVID, and so many countries and so many people interested in the samurai tradition, right? That now is a little bit changing the energy, right? People more little getting tired about the competition style too much. People need to more find the balance, right? Yeah.
And do you go on? Sorry.
Yeah, and also on the different perspective is okay. After the World War II, after the atomic bomb, and we lose the war, right? In this moment, and samurai culture is gone. Okay, and around 9 years, okay, samurai technique, samurai wisdom, samurai tradition, it was illegal in Japan, right? Now it's not illegal. Okay, yes, okay, that's why in this moment, and samurai culture is step by step, it's gone, and the competition started developed. These are other reasons.
Right, I see. Yes. I heard someone refer to it. In fact, we might come on to this person in a minute when we bring you in, Edward. Peter Merry, who's involved with the Broughton Sanctuary, right? Who we may talk about in a minute. But he talked about this idea that right now, as he sees it, we're going into a period of somehow reintegrating the feminine into our culture, and that's what's emerging as far as he can see. Is that something you would agree with? Is that how you would see this?
Yeah. It's talking about feminine energy, right?
Yeah.
Yes, right? Yes, because it's a very important point because samurai history is over 1,000 years history. But before samurai generation, female shaman was the top of the society in Japan. That's why basically Japanese culture is more female energy. Please making an image like a flower ceremony also. Flower ceremonies are not blooming. Everything cut, very minimum. And tea ceremonies are very gently and silently, right? The samurai technique also, and aikido is also how to receive the energy. Okay, not just like attack. Yeah, this is like basically it's a Japanese tradition more female energy. Well, of course, samurai is also female perspective is very important point.
Right. Yeah. And as you say, it's back to balance, right? Yeah, it seems to weave both the masculine and the feminine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It feels like certain aspects of society right now benefit from reintegrating the feminine whilst honoring the masculine. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was talking about and the window element training and the blind meditation master from the behind and the block, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing this training. It's a fourth level for the samurai people, right? And this training is okay. I do lots of people and lots of students from the kids to the elder, the many country over 20,000 people. Female and kids is very strong intuition, right? And
Yeah.
me is also like mine gets sometimes thinking too much. If you mistake, little shame, right? But female and kids very honesty. That's they are very strong intuition, right? Yeah, I think it's okay. For example, in modern generation, we are not fighting with a sword. Okay, sometimes it's a bomb, sometimes it's like a gun, right? That's
Yes.
why our body is very weak. Okay, that's why how to catch the feeling. This is very important technique for the protect yourself, right? Yeah, that's why sometimes we have to learn from the kids. We have to learn from the female, right?
Yeah. That sixth sense, that intuition to create our sensitivity to that, especially as men. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's certainly been a project of mine over the last few years. Is how can I connect more deeply into that? Sounds like I should do some of your training. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. We just touched on Broughton Sanctuary, and I wonder if now might be a good time to weave in the connection. So, Edward, tell us a little bit more about visions for the future, Broughton Sanctuary, how you know Sensei, and as I understand it, Sensei's imminent visitation to Broughton Sanctuary.
Well, obviously, listening to that incredible wisdom, you can understand why we're so delighted that Sensei is going to be joining us at Broton. We're holding a retreat with Sensei at the end of May, 28th of May till the 1st of June. And it's called Learning from Nature. And the timing and a lot of the themes that you've been speaking about just there, about the sacred feminine, about embodiment, about how we come to know ourselves and our alignment and our coherence. This really sits at the very core of what we're doing at Broton, and Roger and Paris, the owners of Broton, have been doing as part of a lineage. So we're honored that Sensei is bringing his lineage, which is 16 generations, but it also feels good to be partnering it with Roger and Paris, because Roger is the 32nd Tempest to have been on this land. And of course, we find ourselves at this time in life. Humanity is at a point where we're clearly witnessing with the polarity, with the challenges of how we steward and use technology. We're at a very important time. And so actually what we have found at Broton is that this vision for the future, we thought we might, when we started this project 6 years ago, we thought we might be talking about what's happening in the economy or what's happening in culture or in society. But actually what became very clear was that it was about what was happening inside of us. It was an interiority. So it's about this sort of internal transformation, this inner change, for an outer system change. So recognizing the intimacy that exists between what is inside you and what is outside of you. So in many ways, our nature is nature, our inner nature and our outer nature becoming one and the same. So my journey with Broton is a special one, because I, like you, Richard, came from a background which was.
Yeah, no, go on. We can hear you.
Oh, so like you, Richard, I came from a traditional background. I worked in the city. I was in the military. I was doing government advisory work. And then I had a big transformation of perspective. I'd always had this quiet voice inside, but I was able to recognize that the alignment, it was important to align what I felt my personality and my soul to be, which seemed to be out of alignment. So bringing my soul and personality into alignment, I felt a clarity that had not been with me in earlier parts of my life. And so in this journey, in 2017, I took this pivot and I found myself at Broton. And
just for our listeners, just briefly, what is Broton? Where is it? Just for people who've never heard that before.
So Broughton is this extraordinary place in North Yorkshire, just at the gateway to the Dales, in a place called Skipton. And it's the family home of the Tempest family. And Roger, the current owner, has reimagined himself now as a custodian. Rather than of a traditional English estate, he now recognizes it as a sanctuary. So this sanctuary, we've got this line, which I think perhaps even Peter Merry might have come up with, which is, in the contemporary landscape of regeneration, Broughton Hall is recognized as a house of transformation. So what we're beginning to realize and understand is that the work we're doing in society is to focus on this renaissance of being. It's the way in which we have to change. So when we look at the teachings that have existed in samurai culture, we understand the lineage of 9,000 years of Vedic insight. There is a perennial truth, and there are universal values which sit at the core and at the source of all these religions. Religion merely is a cultural interpretation of God. And so actually, if we realize that what is elemental, what is fundamental, what is natural and what is nature, what is good, beautiful, and true, this is what sits at the source. So we're recognizing a source, and this is what Broton is all about. It's about finding the source and then recognizing where in human culture and society is this insight and understanding held. So when I was lucky enough to first meet Sensei, like a good Englishman, I put my hand out to shake his hand. And he said, Edward, as a samurai, I tend not to shake hands. I normally bow. And he said, because when bowing, we look at the ground that we share. And I felt the hairs on the back of my neck go up. And I immediately understood that this great master, this teacher, was inviting me to understand the nature of harmony. And harmony, the Hermetic principle of harmony, is one of those universal values which I feel in my heart. And so now to listen to him today talking about what it means to see from an objective perspective, to move beyond the ego, out of our conditioning, out of what we've been. And so then if you look at it, it's actually a physiology as well. It's the neural pathways that we're all sitting in the valleys of what the dominant culture has invited us to become. And so actually how we now work on ourselves in this renaissance of being to climb out of the valleys of our own physiology, our own neural pathways in our head, so that we can summit and we can see what it means to be truly human, to see what it means to rehumanize. And so I think that Sensei is one of the most important people on the planet right now, because he holds 16 generations of sensitive understanding. Again, that story he just told us about how two samurais, they write a poem in shared understanding before one of them will kill the other and then present it. That is a ritualistic understanding of the nature of being, which is far outstrips how we operate in the modern world. So for me, the beauty of recognizing that these elemental understanding, when Sensei and I met and I felt embarrassed for not bowing because I hadn't acknowledged the ground we shared, he then shook my hand and it felt like a different handshake. It didn't feel like a strong patriarchal English military handshake. It felt gentle and sensitive and connecting. And so then he helped me understand the further 5 elements, to recognize that the water, how we flow like nature, the fire in terms of mastery of our own emotions, the wind in terms of that intuition, what we feel but we can't see. And then lastly, of course, that sky, which is connected to everything in unite. So again, when I hear these things, I know that this is what I want everybody to understand, this lineage. So at Broton, we are bringing together people from all over the world. We run a lot of retreats. We have a huge nature recovery project. But what we've come to recognize is that the house itself, Broughton Hall, is this house of transformation. It's where people can come and all of them is welcome. We're non-dogmatic, even though there's an amazing spiritual heritage there. It's a recusant Catholic family that has been there for nearly 1,000 years. But we're non-dogmatic. So we're inviting people to come to Broton as a house of transformation. Paris, who is Roger's fiance, they're going to get married later in the summer. She also is particularly focused on this heart alchemy, this sacred feminine, recognizing the Divine Mother. And of course, when we recognize the Divine Mother, it's very hard not to understand nature. So Paris was very much the inspiration behind the development of Avalon Wellbeing, which is a light center which sits next to Broughton Hall. So this very traditional establishment now has a very modern establishment that works in parallel. And then, of course, the really inspiring thing, which is coming now in the next 2 years, is the development of Arcadia. And Arcadia is going to be the visitor center built on our nature recovery platform. So Roger has taken a lot of the land back in hand. So it was traditionally sheep land, and now it's been put into a big nature recovery program. So we planted 350,000 trees in the last 3 years. And it's incredible to witness how life just comes back, how resurgent nature has become. And it vibrates, and the frequency and energy you feel. And then everything around that changes as well. The field of energy changes. People who come into that field of energy have access to a different level of evolution. So when we see what is happening in society right now, we've been through this period where an evolutionary impulse came. It invited us to transition, to grow beyond, and actually perhaps to move beyond what we hold tight as identity. We were invited to let go, to find harmony, to take up our full place as stewards of life in the consciousness of what it means to be in the world.
You were in great flow. I mean, that was a very broad vision, right? For an evolution of society. And wow.
Well, I can go. This is really what we're all about at Broton. And so I would love to talk about this renaissance of being and something we're developing. And we hope that Sensei is going to be part of it for many years, because I understand Sensei is building an academy in the west coast of Japan. And in many ways, these places are going to be for conscious rehabilitation. These islands of coherence are going to form, and they're going to be places where we can come to understand our true nature, and we can revert to our true nature. So the Broton School, which is going to be a philosophical platform that we're developing with Mark Vernon, with John Butler, with Abigail from Path of Love, we're recognizing that actually it is a systematic process to recognize that everybody is a product of their experiences until they consciously choose not to be. And so they leave their egoic, subjective reality. They come into that space, which is an objective witness consciousness, to realize and understand what Sensei talks about in terms of harmony and belonging in unity, not in the little scope of our neural pathway valleys. But then, of course, what we really want to be, each one of us, is a modern mystic. Each one of us wants to live in an interactive relationship with life. We want to recognize that every atom in every moment is conspiring in our evolution. If we're just quiet enough and present enough to listen, we have so much of an invitation to understand how nature is. We're no different to a seed in germination or a bird flying in migration. We just are. And so anything else that is taking us away is separation. So when we can find that place of non-duality, that coherence and that alignment, and of course, where can we find it? We can find it in the present moment, in every moment, as nature. So the best regulator that is possible is nature. So if we can actually take our consciousness and we can engage in lineage and ritual and training that helps us learn from nature, then we will find ourselves in a much healthier, happier planet. And some of the destructive ways in which we as humans have behaved in the last 100, 200, perhaps even 300 years will begin to transition. So I'm actually a great optimist. And we at Broton think about what it means to go beyond. We have this platform visions for the future, and we're thinking now about how we can create these opportunities to work with people in a global context, to recognize that there is this big reformation coming, and how do we scaffold it? How do we scaffold and hold this realization that the future is not going to be about empire outside of ourselves? The billionaires are pushing for the edge of space, but the future will be characterized by internal work, by an interiority. In very short order, it will not be fashionable to be purchasing Rolls Royces, 4x4 Rolls Royces that are in the center of London, because it'll become very evident that when you see someone driving a 4x4 Rolls Royce in the center of London, that is merely an external expression of their internal trauma. And that won't be very cool. It'll be very unfashionable. You're already seeing it with sort of supermodels at the moment. They're posting pictures of their organic garden. They're not so much interested in the super yachts and the jets anymore. But we're at this transition point. And so I feel that this is what's so beautiful about seeing Sensei's work around the world. He's on the front line and he's helping people realize. I know that he's been working with Paul Polman in Oxford University with Imagine, a former lead chief executive of Unilever, now is imagining how a better world could be. I understand now, Sensei, you're in Ibiza, also working with a group which is looking to a more beautiful future.
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, that was one mighty vision, Edward. I was really energized by everything that you were saying there. I resonated with much of what you had to offer there. But I'm immediately curious about how this shift happened. You're ex-military, working in the city, government advisor. Like, just talk to me a little bit about that pivot. Yeah, was there a singular moment? Yeah, tell me.
I've always been very connected to God, and I didn't realize what everybody else was having as an experience. I think that's part of being immature. You think that everybody's perspective of life is similar. I was very blessed to live in an international way. I grew up as an expatriate living in many different countries, and yet I was sent to boarding school in England, and indeed a lot of my youth was spent in Asia. So this can-do culture in Asia, this belief, this sort of excitement, and then I would come back to England and I would love dairy milk and crisps and all sorts of things that we couldn't get in Asia. But I sort of recognized a sort of quite a stiff duality between the tradition of what it meant to be English and then the ambition of what it meant to be Asian. And my grandfather had been a Spitfire pilot. He'd been in Stalag Luft 3 where the Great Escape took place. And so actually, in many ways, I just wanted to fulfill that third paragraph of the obituary. I wanted to do what my culture and my family and everybody told me I ought to do. So I love my parents. They're beautiful people. And so I did exactly what I was told until I was 37. And when I was sitting in my corner office in number 1 Knightsbridge overlooking Wellington Arch, having been in the military and engaged to a Hollywood actress and having everything that everybody told me I ought to have, I then realized that actually there was something more. There was something more. And I realized I felt a lot of pillars in my life had fallen down almost simultaneously in a 6-month period. And rather than thinking that the betrayal had been outside of myself, I realized that the betrayal had been entirely my own. And actually, I had been not true to myself, to my dharma, to the invitation that life had given me in this incarnation. And so I recognized then that I would surrender. I would surrender entirely to what was being asked of me. And wherever that caused me to end up, it would be just life as an experiment. So I took my whole life as an experiment. And so it's been the most beautiful thing to let go and to allow someone else to take the wheel. And is it Krishna? Is it Jesus? Is it Buddha? It doesn't matter for me. For me, it's an energetic. It's a natural way of being. And that is what I'm committed to now in this life, is to serve this renaissance of being. I've seen it be so nourishing for myself. I don't need or want anything. And so it was a very beautiful moment when I met Roger in Paris, because I was driving up to walk in the Lake District with a friend. And she said, we must stop off at this estate in Yorkshire because they're doing something very interesting there. And so I went for lunch and I ended up staying for 7 months with Roger in Paris in Yorkshire. And I just am very moved by what they're doing there. It's incredibly special to be bred into a system like the family that Roger was born into, and for him to make this big transition and to say, and then of course now I know Nick Ashley Cooper in and he has a festival called the Realization Festival with Mark Vernon at St. Giles, Wimborne St. Giles, Spencer Northampton at the Falcon in the Midlands. It's almost possible to believe that once again these estates, these houses, these people who own land, once again, it could become places of belonging and of community. And I think we're going to see a lot of significance around land. The food we're eating, the food is very toxic when it's commercially farmed with chemicals. But the moment we start eating organic, whole, and coherent food, that food becomes a detonator to our awareness, because our microbial vitality improves inside of ourselves. And if we can have that biodiversity inside of ourselves, we start to expect it outside of ourselves. So we'll move from monoculture to a more again, a more coherent, biodiverse way of farming. And I think this whole agenda, this whole rehumanizing agenda, this whole, coming home, what is happening, there is no other place to go. Because if you look at the way in which we're treating our natural environment and treating our land and treating each other, we need to find harmony again. And that's a very natural principle. It's one that will always be found in nature. Nature is always seeking harmony. And that's why, again, I feel compelled to be doing this work with Sensei.
Yeah, beautiful. So everything you've said, I completely resonate, and I love your optimism. I have to say, I'm blown away by your optimism. And if we were to imagine a world where everybody takes this path, they surrender, they recognize the limitations of ego, and that's the world that we wish to create. How? Because it's one hell of a thing to surrender, right? It takes enormous courage, and for many people, and I'm perhaps one of these, you have to reach a certain point where it even seems like, viable that you could just do that. So, how do we create a world where people, I suppose, aren't fearful of this surrender and begin to warm up to this idea that there is a different way to be in the world?
Everybody is divine. Each one of us has a unique part to play in life, and also there's everything is always as it should be. So we don't really need to do anything, but we each have different dharmas. And I feel it's this journey from running on the battery of your experiences and your conditioning to plugging into the mains. And when you plug into the mains, life comes not from you, but through you. So it doesn't have resistance. And so actually what I believe is we'll start to develop an educational program where people start to recognize that it's a frequency. So we are all generative. We emanate a frequency, and in emanating that frequency, it meets life, and life will return to us lessons. So I believe that life is a succession of experiences which is designed to bring us back to wholeness. So the consciousness is as Sensei speaks of, the objective relationship to experience. So if we experience life from a subjective, egoic perspective, I am an army officer, or I am an investment banker, or I am this, I am that. You're literally limiting yourself to a little framework which has been built by human conditioning. You are divine. You are life. You are no different, as I said, to a seed in germination or a bird migrating. So it's liberating. It's freeing. And actually, what of course does happen is you begin to witness synchronicity. So I had never met Sensei. A friend of mine in Mexico, of all places, wrote to me and said, "Ed, you really need to have this person come to Broton. He's very, very important." And you wouldn't believe it. When Sensei arrived, I met 3 people with Sensei, and these were people I already knew in my life. It was completely remarkable. It was just and so when life begins to show you that level of alignment, you get flow. Csikszentmihalyi, the great Hungarian philosopher, talked about what it means to be in flow. When I am not yet embodied in decent, grounded samurai practice, I cannot wait to learn what Sensei is going to teach me at the end of the month, because I believe that to metabolize the trauma and the resistance inside one, and so that it becomes embodied. And that is, in many ways, we've got to leave our heads, we've got to leave our minds, we've got to journey to our heart, and then we've got to journey to our gut, and we've got to be able to feel. So I know that for my journey is going to be incredibly enhanced by Sensei as a teacher. I follow a guru in southern India who has been a profound influence on me, Sri Shakti Amma Narayani at the Golden Temple in Vellore. She is a goddess, the goddess Narayani, incarnated in a male body. That's probably a whole nother podcast on its own, because you can't squeeze the Divine Mother into 3 minutes. But that has really given me the capacity to understand what my mission is, and my mission is service. So she says that service and devotion are the 2 headlights. So if you're giving, you're moving from your own well-being and you're moving into well-doing. And when you're in well-doing, you're serving in a reciprocal relationship with life. And so it is actually going to be, Richard, this whole renaissance of being, this real reevaluation of what it means to be human, how that comes to be. And of course, it without devotion, devotion is it's like a great plunger. It comes in, and anything that isn't divine leaves you, because the more you culture the divine characteristics, the more aligned with life you become. And in yourself, we all know in ourselves, if you're eating something which is highly processed, is that taking me closer or further away from the best version of myself? If I'm gossipy and mean at the water cooler in the office, is that taking me closer or further away from the best version of myself? If we all know all of the time, and that's the quiet voice inside. That's the soul. So we have the ego and we have the soul. Pakal, the great Mayan king, was buried with a cube of reason in one hand and a sphere of wisdom in the other. And to be human is to be able to hold this balance between the head and the heart, between the soul and the ego. And actually, we must learn to recognize and understand this and how we educate ourselves. It seems remarkable that the samurais understood this. And how could we lose this? How could we lose this understanding and this insight? And so humans, when you go into indigenous communities, many indigenous communities all over the world, they will talk to you about, life is as you dream it. They recognize that every thought is creating a manifested opportunity. So there's so much beautiful insight and wisdom out there. And we humans have understood how it means to live in balance with the seasons and with the rhythm of the moon. But, we've just lost it because we got a little bit too into Netflix and fast cars and whatever else we need to titillate ourselves.
Yeah. And I love how you started your answer with education, which parallels what when I asked Sensei, where do we start as a samurai? It wasn't go buy a sword, it was buy a book. And you're saying something similar here with it. It starts with education, and that makes complete sense to me, because where in our educational system right now are the messages we've heard today emphasized, right? It's not there. So I love the fact that the education is a big part of the mission at the Broughton Sanctuary, and giving people experiences, right? Because we have to experience this stuff as well. And again, this is what Sensei says: you start with a book, but in the end, you've got to experience the wind. Is that something you see, Edward, that a lot of this needs to be experiential?
I think it, yes. I remember once some spiritual friends of mine said to me, Ed, you need to be more grounded. And I was like, well, I'm walking in nature, and I walk barefoot, I'm in the forest, and I do yoga. I feel very, embodied and grounded. But then I did a course called Path of Love. And Path of Love is a very important course that takes place at Broton every year. And in this process, you sit and it really creates connection with yourself and with the people you do the process with. And now, one's advised not to sort of share the process, to not, diminish the opportunity for the people who are going for the first time. But the one thing I can say is that I actually could feel inside of myself a metabolizing capacity, a metabolizing. So yes, it has to be experienced. Each person, you can't learn it, as Sensei has said, you can't learn it through your head. You can't learn it from the teacher. It has to be experienced. It has to be practiced. And I think that is at a cellular level. Your body actually responds to the new level of awareness. And I think it becomes easier to develop and to grow in places where humans feel safe and held. So when the energetic field is strong, because there's a lot of the stewardship of attention, which is our divinity, our attention, where we put our attention, the energy flows, right? So we've got to recognize the power of the practices that we do. So a daily practice, when we go to church, this is ritual, which is about the stewardship of our attention. And so when you steward attention, you're culturing a field and an environment which becomes generative. It becomes connective. It's just, I'm a gardener. I love to garden. And you'll begin to understand what you need to culture these environments that become generative and evolutionary and encourage growth. So yes, I believe that it's very difficult to experience it when you're in some of the places that we are expected to live and work in the modern world. But I think it's also important for people to recognize that they themselves are generative. They themselves are emanating a frequency. So I used to feel that when I went to London, I didn't like it so much because of the energy, but actually, no, you can flip it. You can actually be generative. You can actually, with your energy, change the experience for yourself and everybody around you in every moment. And so I feel that actually it's about learning to be a good pilot, learning how to be the best master of your mind, master of your heart, master of your gut. So as Sensei says, for those leaders that are listening to this podcast, to be a good leader, remove the emotion, remove the ego, and actually create that connection to something deeper, something beyond, which is this source, which is this harmony, which is this belonging and this wholeness, this coherence.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I particularly liked about what you said there, especially in the context of leader, is that we may think of ourselves as an educator in a traditional sense of transferring knowledge, and that may be part of the role of a leader who's also teaching, but to create an energetic space where people feel held and they can experience love, they can experience connection to nature, but that creating a space which is conducive to people having that experience, I think needs to be part of our educational philosophy, beyond concepts, right? That's what I love about what you said.
Also, I think, I'm not a master, nor am I a teacher, but, when you come into the presence of a master or a teacher, one thing that always strikes you is the humor and the ability and the humility. And of course, the seed of that word comes from humus, which is also the soil. So it's the human, to be human, to be humble, and to be grounded is one and the same. And that's why I love, the moment I met Sensei, I could feel it. The moment I met him, so I will give everything I have to ensure that his mission and his vision and what he's holding, and it's in many ways it's sad, because rather than just being passed on to his son, it's being passed on to now many people. So what could have been the sad ending of a lineage is actually now going to be the reflowering. It's the resurgence of this lineage. And so Sensei, I feel honored that I'm part of this team that is going to be helping, spread this teaching, and because I think it's going to build a better world. And so we need to find authentic and real teachers and real people to aspire to be like, not celebrities, not politicians. And so when you meet somebody who creates an energetic experience in you, you just have a deep knowing that the person is good, beautiful, and true, and what he's doing is aligned with the divine. It's the best thing in the world to feel that sense of purpose. In fact, there is no other purpose like it. And so that's what I hope, Richard, everybody discovers in life, is that ability to serve life.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Ed. Brilliant. And I love the work that you're engaged in. I'd love to bring Sensei back in, having heard everything from Edward there. Is there any reflections on what Ed has said? Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything come up for you?
Wow, well, thank you so much. I'm so honored. Thank you so much. Your beautiful story. Thank you very much. And also, how can I say? I want to say, and I'm teaching samurai wisdom techniques, but it's not mine because it's from the ancestors. I'm just like a bridge. Yeah, that's I'm so happy to become a bridge and connecting and modern generation, and you guys and ancestors. Yeah, I'm so honored to become a bridge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, well, this has been such a rich conversation. I feel like I've got two for the price of one here. I feel completely energized by both of what you've said. So again, for people, Broughton Sanctuary, we'll put a link in the description. So there's a range of programs, many of which you've touched on, Edward, in this conversation, and specifically, again, there's a workshop that Sensei is putting on. Give me the dates and exactly for that again.
28th of May until the 1st of June, up at Broton. We're very nearly full, and so we're a small group. We're going to be 25, 30 people. So a lot of time over the 4 days to connect with nature, connect with Sensei, and just get an initiation into this teaching about the fundamental elements and what it means to learn from this lineage. So yeah, really honored by the opportunity to work with Sensei, and everyone is most welcome whenever they like at Broton for this or for other moments too. It's worth being there. There's so much you can do at Broton.
Yeah, it really seems to be sailing up in the I suppose the consciousness, culture or whatever we want to call this bubble that many of us seem to now be accessing. It's wonderful. It seems to be playing a really important role. I definitely intend to get up there at some point.
Well, you should come. You should come, Richard. Why do you come on the course?
Well, I do have 2 young children. So, I have to choose my past request very carefully. This would be a very good one to make a request around. But yeah, I'd love to. So I certainly would love to. Okay. Anything else? Any parting words that either you, Edward, or you, Sensei, would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, well, everything perfect. It's so excited conversation. Thank you so much. Again, I'm so happy to become a bridge. Yes, I'm doing a best in the sanctuary retreat. I'm so excited.
Brilliant. And it's been a complete honor to be in your presence and to hear from you. I'm just very grateful that you've come into my life for the last hour or so, and I hope I continue to learn from your wisdom and get opportunities to meet you in person at one point. That would be awesome. Edward, any final words from you?
It's really wonderful. I came to this recording because Tanya Watia, who is of Japanese heritage, was going to serve as a translator. So it was an unexpected late call, but and I don't do many podcasts, so it really feels wonderful to be connected with you, Richard, someone who is holding the light, who stepped out of the world that is and is moving to the world that's coming. And we're all now just showing up for this, and so it feels nice to connect with you. And like I said before, it's just I feel very blessed to be honored to hold Sensei in this lineage, and again to serve as this bridge with Roger and Paris at Broton. So yeah, it's very lovely to go into a day with the heart full after a lovely conversation like this. So thank you.
Wonderful. And again, what I want to thank for you is just your raw optimism. I mean, it's just wonderful to experience that. Yeah, it's for a different world, for a different quality of being for all of us. Yeah, I love that. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you both. This has been wonderful to have spent this time with you. Yeah, thanks again for sharing your time and your wisdom.